What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So with the William Nylander news extension becoming official today, I have just been in like the contract extension mood the last couple of days. So today I decided to look ahead to 2025. We're going to go through 17 of the most prominent unrestricted free agents, one of those being Mitch Marner that I've talked about a lot in the William Nylander extension. And we got other studs like Draisaitl, Rantanen, Saros, Shesterkin, Hedman. This class is loaded. Will most of these guys actually see unrestricted free agency? Probably not. Probably not going to be the case. Probably most of them will sign in this, or like half of them will sign in the summer. By January 1st, like 75% of them is. But some of them might actually hit the open market. So I'm going to go through and predict what I think their contracts will look like based on what they're doing this season and their overall body of work. And I'll also tell you if I think that it's a lock that this guy's going to re-sign, if it's a 75% chance, or if I think these guys are going to hit the open market. So without further ado, let's talk about the biggest fish as of the 2025 unrestricted free agency class. That's obviously Leon Draisaitl. He is having kind of a down year by his very, very high standards. He only has 18 goals and 24 assists for 42 points in 36 games. So he's only on pace for like high 90s points on the season, which you look at Leon Draisaitl last year, 128. He has the second most points in the entire 2020s, only behind Connor McDavid, 2019-2020 Hart winner. He's still going to get an absolute bag. I think he is going to end up signing with the Edmonton Oilers. I'm going to go with the 4-year deal at 13.25. I think he kind of does a little bit of a Matthews in terms of not committing for those 8 years, especially if it is a little bit of a down year. Maybe he won't sign this, honestly, this summer, although Oilers fans would probably want that security. If he ends up only getting 90-ish points, I wouldn't sign this summer if I'm Draisaitl. I'm breaking out again next year, going for north of 110. So I'm going to go with the 4-year deal as of right now. Maybe he does a Matthews in September. He locks up for 4 years and sees what happens with McDavid's free agency, obviously, and just the Oilers as a whole haven't had that much of playoff success. So maybe he just does the 4-year thing, and then in 4 years he signs another 4-year $15 million deal by then with the cap going up. He is a fantastic player, and you're going to see going forward, whenever a top 5 player or maybe even top 10, they're going to become the highest paid player in the entire NHL. Happened with Matthews. I thought he was top 5 passes. McDavid obviously happened with McKinnon with 12.6. So I think Draisaitl on his next deal is going to become the highest paid player in the entire NHL whenever his contract starts. Up next, Mikko Rantanen. Now, the Avalanche are pretty lucky because I can't see Mikko Rantanen going north of McKinnon's deal, 8 years at $12.6 million. So I'm going to go with 8 years at $12 million. Right now, I think he's making around $9.7 million. And this guy has been fantastic, especially the last 2 seasons. 20 goals, 30 assists for 50 points in 40 games this season. Last year, 55 and 50 for 105 points. He's just one of the best power forwards in the entire league. He is not this McKinnon merchant that people kind of labeled him 2 to 3 years ago. I always thought that was absolutely BS, especially because I tweeted it out earlier today. There was that one time in 2018, 2019 where he broke out and had 73 points in 48 games. The first 48 games looked like he was going to win the goddamn Hart. So on his own, he's a superstar. He's a top 15 player in the entire NHL. I think he probably should on the open market get like 12.5, maybe even 12.75. But we've seen with the Avalanche, McKinnon looks like a discount now, especially with like a William Nylander deal. Makar only took $9 million when we all knew that he could have demanded more on like a 5 or 6 year deal. So I think Rantanen comes in at a respectable $12 million, which would make him like the 5th or 4th even highest paid player when that kicks in, but he is easily worth it. Next up, we got a very interesting case of Brock Besser. Very interesting in the sense that he's playing fantastic right now. He's probably going to cruise to 40 goals this season, but when you look at the prior seasons, it's not that impressive. He's shooting 22.6%, so how sustainable is that? And over the last 2 years before this season, he had 41 goals, 60 points for 101 points in just 141 games. So although I do think he is a very good first liner, I'm going to go with an 8-year deal at $8 million. He's still only 26 years old. I don't think he's going to absolutely cash in, but if I'm the Canucks, I am locking him up. He's a good first liner, but he's probably not a perennial 40-goal guy. He's probably a perennial mid-30s goals, mid-40s assists in that around 70 to 80 point range, which is worth around $8 million. Next up, we got UC Saros. a little bit of an interesting, kind of like the reverse Brock Besser in the sense that this year he has a 901 save percentage, 3.01, but in the prior 3 seasons, he was a no doubt top 5 goalie every single year. He put up a 920 and a 2.59 goals against. Last 2 years has easily been top 5, I think even top 3 in goals saved above expected while playing 64 and 67 games respectively the prior 2 years. So I think he is going to get paid a decent amount. I'm going to go 7 years at $8.5 million. I think the Ilya Sorokin deal is a good rough comp. Obviously, it's going to be a year later, so I think he is going to get more considering the salary cap jump. He is going to be older than Sorokin when he signs that deal, but I don't really think that matters that much. 7 years instead of 8. I think UC Saros is going to get a massive bag. Not quite a Vasilevsky or obviously Carey Price a couple years ago, but assuming he bounces back, plays good this season, they're probably going to get it done this summer. In my opinion, even with Askarov on the come up, that actually might mess it up a little bit. Maybe we'll go 5 or 6 years because Askarov is on his way up. But I think $8.5 million is about right for UC Saros. Sidney Crosby, 4 years, $8.7 million. Still a fantastic player, but he definitely has regressed a little bit relative to 5 years ago when he was arguably still the best player in the entire league. This season, he has 22 goals, 19 assists for 41 points in 39 games. So he's still probably going to be sniffing 40-ish goals, 90 points. Still a top 15 player in my books. But I think considering he is 36 right now, would be 37 when an extension kicked in. 4 years at that $8.7 million range seems about right. Right now, he's probably an $11 to $12 million player. A year from now, 2 years from now, when this extension would kick in, what's he going to look like? I still think he's going to be very good. He's obviously aged great. So I think $8.7 million seems about right and seems like a good payday for Crosby, who should have been getting paid a lot more over the past decade. So I think they're going to give him a decent amount on that back end. We're going to a defenseman, Jacob Slavin, 6 years, $7.5 million. I kind of looked at the Devon Tays contract. I think they're either the same age or 1 year apart. Tays got 7 years at $7.25 million. I think Slavin has a much bigger track record in terms of being an elite defensive defenseman in the past 6-7 years compared to Tays. Really, he was very good on my Islanders, but until he got into that Colorado system and playing with Makar, that's the other thing, he plays with Makar, so he had a little bit less leverage. So I'm going to go 7.5 for 6 years. Again, he is going to be 30 years old when this hypothetical extension kicks in, so I can't really go 7 or 8 years, but I think 7.5 in terms of money makes a lot of sense for the Carolina Hurricanes. Easily going to be worth $7.5 million the first couple years of that contract. How it's going to age is we'll see, but I think around the 6 year, $7.5 million deal makes a lot of sense. Another defenseman, an older defenseman, Victor Hedman. I'm going to go 4 years at $7 million. This would kick in when he's 34-ish, and when you look at him, his defensive numbers have kind of fallen off in recent years. Still an elite offensive defenseman, but I think 4 years, he gets some term at a reasonable cap hit, obviously, with that fall off accounted for. I don't think you can give him 8.5, even with the cap going up, considering what we've seen the past 2 years in terms of him defensively, but he's definitely still a top pairing defenseman and should get top pairing money. So 4 years, $7 million. Another guy that was drafted in the 2009 draft that went first instead of second like Hedman, John Tavares, 3 years, $6.5 million. I can see like this would be a pretty solid deal for the Leafs, assuming he's basically the same player that he is now, which he has been for the last 3 or 4 years. I have no reason to think he's going to fall off in the next year and a half. He's been around the 75 to 80 point guy, which, yes, he's not worth $11 million, but I think he is going to take somewhat of a discount to stay in Toronto because Brad Treliving should know he's not leaving. Like he's going to want to stay at all costs, and I think he maybe feels bad in a way for taking $11 million the last 5 seasons when he's not really worth it. So 3 years, 6.5 is similar to the deal that Claude Giroux signed to come back to Ottawa, be the hometown kid. So I think Tavares is going to go from overpaid to maybe even underpaid at least the first year or two on that $6.5 million contract if he's still putting up 70-ish points. And I think the narrative is going to switch on John Tavares in the sense that overpaid captain to, oh, he took a discount and now he provides so much value. Another sticking in Ontario, Jacob Chikrin's a really weird one because I'm going to go 6 years, $8.25 million because he's playing better than Shabbat and Sanderson this year. And Sanderson is still pretty young. But when looking at this compared to Shabbat signed an 8-year, $8 million contract. Chikrin's going to say, oh, the cap's rising. Shabbat's was signed years ago. I deserve at least more than Chikrin, at least more than Shabbat. I don't think Chikrin can demand $9+ million because he is going to be around 27 or 28 when this deal kicks in. So I think 6 years at 8.25. He has proven himself this year as a very good top pairing defenseman. I don't think that's really debatable. He put up good results in Arizona, but on Ottawa, he's really emerged as their number one guy this season. So I think 8.25 is a decent number for a guy that's going to be in the prime for most of his career. A 6-year deal takes him to 33 or 34. Seems about fair. Carter Verhaeghe quietly has been fantastic the past 2 seasons. He has 64 goals, 48 points for 112 points in the last 120 games the past 2 seasons, which again is around, he hit 42 goals last year. He's on pace for around 40 this season. He's definitely not a star, which is why I have him at 5 years, $7.5 million. He's 28 years old right now. Again, he's not a star by any means. He's definitely more of a complimentary piece to Alexander Barkov. Like, he can't drive his own line, but he can give you 40 goals when you put him on a line with a player like Alexander Barkov. So I think they're definitely going to prioritize keeping Verhaeghe. Again, just solid two-way guy, sniper, and assuming he doesn't fall off a cliff those first 2 or 3 years at $7.5 million, if he's scoring 35 to 43 goals, let's say, that's perfectly worth it. Around $7 million, 7.5 is what a solid first liner is going to get paid in like 2 to 3 years. So that sounds about right. 5 years, $7.5 million. Mitch Marner, 8 years, $12 million. I think he's going to pull a Nylander. He's not having the best season this year. I think he's not going to sign this summer, but he's going to come out hot in that contract year and absolutely ball out. And again, with that $12 million, yes, I said it in multiple video. I said it video 2 days ago about the Nylander extension. Marner, although this season is not playing nearly as good as Nylander, only 40 points in 37 games. The prior 3 seasons, Marner has 85 goals, 178 assists for 263 points in 207 games. Nylander has 91 goals, 118 assists for 209 points in 214 games. So Marner has 54 more points in 7 less games than Nylander in the prior 3 seasons before this year. So he definitely has that argument that he's been a consistent elite player. And if he turns it around this season, maybe he signs this summer for 8-12. And if he turns it around at the back half of this season, as well as a fantastic start to next season, I think he's going to get like $12 million. Is he as good as Mikko Rantanen, who I also have getting 8 years, $12 million? Not really, but we don't have to talk about that. If he plays to his potential, he will be worth $12 million. If he can be a very good defensive, around 100-point guy, that's worth $12 million. That's the Mitch Marner that they need to bank on if they are going to sign him for this much. Staying in Canada, we got Ehlers, 8 years, $7.75 million. He's been about a solid low 70-ish point pace guy the last 3 years. I don't know why he doesn't play so much. He played like 15 minutes a night last year and only 16, 20 this year. I think he still should play more on this team, but he still has put up very good results. I think he comes in just below the Scheifele and Hellebuck extensions that they just got at $8.5 million. So 7.75 seems about right. And he was in that 2014 draft class, so I expect him. He's going to be 28 or 29 when this deal kicks in. So I think he's going to get those 8 years, and they're going to lock him up, and they're going to have Scheifele, Hellebuck, Ehlers, all at reasonable cap hits for at least the first 3 or 4 years. Honestly, deals at the first 3 or 4 years of their contract. They'll have to go through an apocalyptic rebuild in like 7 or 8 years when those contracts are on their back third. But right now, it's clearly working for the Winnipeg Jets, so it's a solid deal. Shesterkin, 8 years, $8.75 million. He's having a down year similarly to Saros, but he is playing better than Saros. He has a .908 save percentage and 2.75 goals against average. He's at like 8 goals saved above expected, which puts him, I think, like 13th or 14th in the entire league. So it's a down year, but he's still like an average to above average starter as a down year. Obviously had one of the better Vezina winning seasons of the 21st century, and his 2 other seasons, the COVID-shortened 2021 season and last year, were both .916 save percentages. So I think this guy has obviously a fantastic track record. He's only 28 years old, I think. I think the Rangers lock him up on an 8-year, $8.75 million contract. That seems about right. I think he comes under compared to a Vasilevsky, but more than a Saros, more than a Sorokin, given
given that Sorokin's a year before the cap really jumps, and Shesterkin has a better singular season than a UC Soros, and as a result does get a little bit more. Going to a captain in Brad Marchand. Brad Marchand, I'm going to go with 3 years, $7 million. They've been getting him the past 6 years or something at like $6 million. It has been one of the best deals in the entire NHL. And I think he does take a pretty reasonable deal at 3 years, $7 million. He's definitely not the Brad Marchand from 2018 to 2021, who was like 100-point Selke level, but he's still a reliable 75 to 80-point defense. Has fallen off a little bit now that he doesn't play with Patrice Bergeron, but still responsible defensive player as well as a great leader. So at $7 million, I think that's going to be a very good deal for them and kind of a team-friendly deal, keeping their captain. Going over to Vegas, Shea Theodore, 6 years, $7 million. He's an elite offensive defenseman. There's no doubt about that. Last 2 years has 59 points in 75 games. The only problem is he can't really stay healthy, but when he is healthy, he's probably a top 30 defenseman in the entire NHL, in my opinion. So when looking at this, I think Vegas gives him some term so they get that cap hit low while they can keep on contending. He's going to be either, I think, 30 when this deal kicks in. So 6 years, you could expect him to still be an elite defenseman at $7 million. Seems like about a fair deal. Travis Konechny, second to last. Konechny's been an offensive goddamn engine for the Flyers the past 2 years. 52 goals, 45 assists for 97 points in 99 games. 8 years, $8.5 million. Seems about right. His track record before this most recent 1.5 season stretch, not the most impressive, but he has always been in a good first line forward, and obviously has taken his game to another level. Do I think he's an utter game breaker that deserves $10 million? No, not quite. But considering this deal is going to kick in when he's 26 years old, or 27 years old, 8 years, $8.5 million. Seems about right. I don't, especially because they're competitive. I thought maybe this time last year that they were eventually going to trade him because he's only making like $5.5 million. That could still be a possibility, but I think the Flyers end up re-signing him. Lastly, we got Brock Nelson, who I have on a 4-year, $7 million deal, which might seem like a lot of term considering he is 33 right now. But when you look at him the last 3 years, he has been a sneaky elite player. I've tried to tell people he's been on all my underrated lists, but the last 3 years he has 90 goals, 77 assists, 167 points in 190 games, which is 39 goal, 33 assists, 72 point splits. Again, almost 40 goals a season over the last 3 years based on the paces. He is very good in the fact that he has to play basically a second line center role on the Islanders, at least for the past full year of games for the most part, and he's putting up these great results, is very impressive, and I think Lou is going to give him some term, those 4 years, which, again, final years of those deal might not age that well, but right now he is well worth $7 million. He's probably like an $8.5 million guy, in my opinion. I watch him every night. I freaking love his game, so I think 4 years, $7 million. But that's it. Those are the 17 guys. Drop some other unrestricted guys. I tried to go over all the big ones. I can do the restricted guys like Bouchard, Dobson need to get paid as well. But let me know in the comments what do you think about this, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.